After one long month of waiting, Mighty Morphin Power Rangers has finally returned, and at the start of 2024, we're kicking off with these events happening in MMPR 116. Draken goes into the Morphin grid, he's confronted by his worst mistake, the other rest of the heroes are forced to escape and some not making it back, the Master Arch is destroyed, Dark Spectre is given Keeper's staff that allows him to infect the Morphin grid even more, Ranger Slayer is freed from Dark Spectre's control, and Draken dies. Well, I think. We'll touch base on this later on in the video. But Mighty Morphin Power Rangers issue 116 is out now, and Melissa isn't holding back with this issue, as it was an emotional roller coaster, and I was almost tearing up while reading this issue because it got to me really hard when you get to the end of this issue. But like I said, this is an emotional roller coaster and it is not over yet, as Darkest Hour is still continuing, and this hour directly leads into Power Rangers Unlimited The Morphin Masters that will be dropping next week. But one thing that was great with this issue is the artwork, because 116 has artwork helmed by Adam Gorham and Marco Renner, along with colouring done by Joanna Lafinti. I do apologise if I butchered your name. And the colouring in this issue is great, because with this issue taking place in the Morphin grid and the ruins of an important place for a certain character, the tone has this grey and grim colour to it, and it shows the direness of the situation. And when it starts to rain in the Morphin grid for dramatic effect, the colour gets even more darker, with some angles and shots we see of these characters looking amazing, especially for the expression on their faces, that being an infected Ranger Slayer who has these glowing red eyes and veins cracking across their face, giving that creepiness factor to the character. Alright, let's talk about the main meat and potatoes of MMPR 116, because there is a lot to go over. So, this issue is a Draken and Ranger Slayer focused issue, if you couldn't tell, because if you look at the cover, you've got Draken in his classic attire, and behind him are the shots of MMPR Green and MMPR White, with Saba behind them in the center. Now, this cover has a couple of deep meanings you can look into. One, you've got Draken standing in front of the things that was created to make the Lord Draken outfit, the Green Ranger and the White Ranger, being the remnants of those suits. And two, you've got Draken standing there menacingly, and behind him is the hero he could have been if he had those powers. Or three, it's a really cool cover and there's nothing to look too deep into it, but overall this was a really fantastic cover, and it's crazy to think about because once again we're in January, because last year in January we got the Rita becoming Mistress Vile focused issue, the kickstart the year, and this year in 2024 we're kickstarting the year off with the Draken focused issue and Ranger Slayer that dives deep into Draken and Ranger Slayer's character. So although we do cut to other stuff going on in the Power Rangers universe with this comic in Darkest Hour, this was mostly a Draken themed issue and I really enjoyed it. So the issue opens up with a flashback in the world of the Coinless right before the events of Shattered Grid, and you have Ranger Slayer telling Draken about a successful mission, and Draken is quick to praise her on a job well done, and Ranger Slayer is ready to accept whatever mission she gets next, because whatever Draken desires, she'll be there to grant it for him. And Draken does say, what if he wants an equal? And Ranger Slayer doesn't really give a response, she's got a shocked expression on her face and doesn't say anything, and Draken just replies with never mind and walks away, and that's where the flashback ends. So one thing that is brought up in this issue is Draken had feelings for Ranger Slayer and wanted Ranger Slayer to love him back, but because he turned her into a mindless slave, he couldn't get that same affection back or the same love back. Now, there has been some theories and speculations in the fandom that some people believe that because Draken turned her into a mindless slave, they might have boinked. Nothing is confirmed yet, but that's a big headcanon and theory amongst the fandom. But the story of Draken and Ranger Slayer is one of mental abuse, you could say, and you still see that abuse or themes of abuse here with Dark Spectre. So that's one of the big themes when it comes to Ranger Slayer and Draken. And the dynamic between these two characters is quite the interesting one as their feelings come out during this fight, because Draken loved Ranger Slayer, and he could never get that same love back because he brainwashed her and turned her into a mindless servant. And Draken wanted to see that same love that he shared for her returned, but he never got it in the end. And you have to remember, this is a version of Tommy Oliver that in every timeline, he was the most hated. He was the one that was the loneliest out of all of them. So of course, Draken probably wanted some kind of love, some kind of affection that he never got even when he made her second in command. But during the fight, Draken does acknowledge his actions and knows that it was a mistake to have Ranger Slayer controlled like that, making sure that his final actions are the ones that set her free. Now, we'll get back to Draken in a bit because I want to close the video on that. So let us jump back to Safe Haven, as in Mighty Morphin Power Rangers 115, we saw our heroes being overwhelmed by Dark Spectre, Mistress Vile, Alpha 1, plus an army of infected Rangers and Thralls. So our heroes are forced to escape Safe Haven, and not everyone makes it back safely. The Rangers being left behind after this giant battle is Coinless Bulk, Scorpina, Taylor, and Kia. Now, you do see a panel of Yale, Bulk, and Scorpina thrown in a cell with Alpha 1 taunting them by telling them Yale to play nice with each other and the other Rangers, but seeing the angle of these characters is hard to see if they're infected with Dark Spectre's influence, but I'm guessing they probably were infected with the precautions that Dark Spectre and Mistress Vile have been taking during this battle. Now, Kia wasn't really captured. I'm guessing she snuck off to do her own thing during the chaos of everything that was going on, and what she does is it blows up the Master Arch. Now, with both Master Arches being destroyed, unless there's a third one out there, I do wonder how Ranger Slayer will be returning back to this world, because the Master Arches were the keys between the Power Rangers universes and the dimensions, and everything in between. And with the Master Arch destroyed, I do wonder how they're going to return back. But we've also got the Hyperforce Rangers and their ship that can travel through space and time, so I do get the feeling with the brains of Billy, Kendall, and the Phantom Ranger, they might think of something. What that is, I've got no idea, but with one of the covers of Billy seemingly jumping into the Morphin grid and reaching out to Ranger Slayer, I get the feeling that we've got something that will be happening later down the line that is teasing the events of what's to come with that cover. So you never know. So we'll have to wait and see, because we're on issue 116 and I believe that's the cover for 118. So we've got a couple of months away before we find out what that cover actually means. So because our heroes escaped and the Master Arch was destroyed, this angers Dark Spectre and he takes his anger out on Rita once again. And here you see that form of abuse used on Rita that she gets from Dark Spectre, because she's cowering and she's curled up into a ball, and when Dark Spectre questions what use does she have due to all her failures, you can see the fear on her eyes as she's looking up at Dark Spectre. But Rita, once again, quickly tries to amend the situation by revealing that she's breached the arch using the Morphin grid energy she's got in her body and transferred some of that power into Keeper's staff, and she gives that staff to Dark Spectre. So once again, whenever Rita fails Dark Spectre, she gets shouted, she gets told off, she quickly tries amending that situation and apologizing to make sure that she doesn't get killed off. And I get the feeling that she's only going to get so many chances until Dark Spectre kills her or finds no use for her anymore. So it's only a matter of time before we see Dark Spectre getting rid of Rita and she realizes that the mistake that she's made while serving under him. But once Dark Spectre receives his new staff, we do get this awesome 2-page spread of all these different Rangers across the Morphin grid, and in the center of everything you've got our heroes reacting to what's been recently happening. And this is a powerful 2-page spread, because in the middle you've got Lord Zed lashing out at the Hyperforce Rangers. Below them, you've got what I mentioned earlier of some of the Rangers in their prison cells and Alpha 1 taunting them. Below them, you've got Trinies hugging the mainline Trini, promising Coinless Trini that they'll get the others back, while Zack and Billy are watching with concerned looks on their faces. And the final panel is Kimberly on her hands and knees, screaming, sobbing, and crying because everything that went wrong in the situation got 100 times worse and went wrong in so many ways. Now, around the center of these panels, we see several different Ranger teams. On the left, you've got Dino Fury, Mega Force, and Mystic Force. And then on the other side, you've got Jungle Fury, Lost Galaxy, and Time Force. Now, I don't know if these characters will be playing a role in the story, but I really hope they do. But I feel like this is to show the power that Dark Spectre has with all the timelines he can infect with his brand new stuff. And all these teams are bangers, and I love them, and I really do hope they appear in the comics. Like, can you imagine if Time Force shows up, like Jen comes back into the comic again like she did in Shattered Grid, or we see Dino Fury or Lost Galaxy? Can you imagine getting a post-Lost Galaxy Corone confronting Dark Spectre? That would be really cool to see. Now, going back to the Draken and Ranger Slayer stuff, I've talked about the emotional weight of this fight, but I really need to talk about the physicalness of this fight. But one thing I need to talk about, and I haven't brushed up upon it in the review/recap, that is where this fight takes place within the Morphin grid, as the Morphin grid manifests the city or the ruins, and this area has some importance to Draken, as it's where Rita Repulsa found him and gave him the name Draken. So that's what we get in this issue. Now, the physicalness of this fight is great because it is brutal. There's a scene where Draken and Ranger Slayer cross blades as they clash, but then Ranger Slayer just hits Draken with a headbutt to the face with enough impact to break his helmet. And if there's one thing that I love in Sentai, Rider, or Power Rangers, it's battle damaged helmets. And seeing Draken having his battle damaged helmet here, you can tell that shit is getting real. But the battle between Draken and Ranger Slayer ends with them delivering one last blow at each other, where Ranger Slayer is set free from Dark Spectre's control. But Draken, well, he might be dead, but he gives Ranger Slayer one last mission to find the Morphin Masters and not to let the enemy win, as he hands Ranger Slayer his power coin and it soon begins to glow in her hands. And this is where the issue ends, and it's going to tie directly into Power Rangers Unlimited the Morphin Master. So that's where we end off with 116. Alright, so is Draken dead? That is the big question here. Now, this is comics and no one stays dead forever in comics, but you have to keep in mind a few key factors here. When we see Draken in the Morphin grid at the start of the issue, he starts narrating his life by saying who he is, what he's done, how he's been a king, a god, a murderer. He's done all of these things, and if he could be them again. But he also says that he's probably run out of chances, and he narrates this same dialogue at the start of the issue and near the end of the issue when he goes to deliver the final blow to Ranger Slayer. So that to me sounds like the words of someone who's accepted their fate and they're ready to die. Now, I know a lot of people have been mixed about Draken post Shattered Grid, but if you've been reading the comics since the beginning to now, Draken has had an entire character arc, and if the comics are ending with Darkest Hour like a lot of people are speculating, then I can understand if Melissa wants to end Draken's story here. And Draken dying in the Morphin grid, the one thing that he tried to take over all those years ago, and then getting some kind of redemption in the Morphin grid is kind of symbolic in a way, because Shattered Grid ended with Draken wanting a lonesome death and chose to stay behind, and here he's using his last dying breath to save someone he cared about. Now, with Ranger Slayer getting Draken's power coin, could we see her getting a new form? Possibly. I would love to see that, but we're going to have to wait a couple of issues to see if anything comes from that with Kimberly or Ranger Slayer inheriting Draken's power coin. Hopefully they do something with that with Ranger Slayer holding onto Draken's old power coin. But overall, Mighty Morphin Power Rangers 116 was another fantastic issue. Melissa has been killing it. This issue was like I said, it was an emotional roller coaster. I was not expecting a Draken story that hit me in the gut so much when we got to the closing pages of this issue, because this was Draken coming into terms with his past as it came back to haunt him, and he's confronting that. And his dying moments is him trying to fix one of his mistakes. So this issue just it was quite the emotional roller coaster. Like I said, this issue will probably make you sob, probably make you cry, or make you feel something once you're done reading it. And Melissa hit those emotional points when reading this issue, and I can't wait to see where it's going to go next. Is Draken alive? Is Draken dead? What is Ranger Slayer going to find in the Power Rangers Unlimited book? And where do we go from here with the rescue mission being a complete failure? So we'll have to go from there and see what happens. But anyway, guys, what did you think of Mighty Morphin Power Rangers 116? Did you love it? Did you hate it? Tell me in the comment section down below. I'd love to hear your thoughts and opinions. With that said, I'm out of here. Have a wonderful day or night, and I'll see you guys later. Peace out. Take care. Bye.